Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Books, The Language of Success, an interdisciplinary podcast on child and adult literacy. Today, the host of Beyond the Books, Susan Stoderl, will speak about media literacy and the cult of ignorance. Quotes from authors Will Rogers, George Orwell, and Isaac Asimov will illustrate how long and how pervasive the cult of ignorance has been and is in today's American society. California is implementing a new media literacy curriculum in January 24 for grades K through 12. Its purpose is to teach students to identify what is truthful and what is not. In other words, to teach them to critically think. Other states are recognizing the power of misinformation, the polite term for lying and distorting the truth. There is a long history of the tie between illiteracy and the cult of ignorance. Will Rogers, a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and one of the most beloved actors and personalities of the early 20th century until his death in 1935, addressed the issue with barbed humor. I quote, "Ignorance lies not in the things you don't know, but in the things you know that ain't so." And we also find true today, quote, "When ignorance gets started, it knows no bounds." George Orwell's dystopian novel, 1984, was published in 1949, just a few years after World War I and a few months before North Korea attacked South Korea. Orwell called attention to the same problem when he wrote, quote, "There was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad." We are now living in a post-truth world, much like Orwell predicted. 30 years later, another famous author, Isaac Asimov, wrote a short essay called The Cult of Ignorance, which was written in 1980. One of the potent passages is as follows. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread, winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is as good as your knowledge. Politicians have routinely striven to speak as ungrammatically as possible in order to avoid offending their audiences by appearing to have gone to school. Anti-intellectualism, translated anti-literacy, translated anti-education, is filled with euphemisms to subtly propagate ideas like, "Don't trust experts." In 1980, Mr. Asimov wrote, "The new buzzword for anyone who admires competence, knowledge, learning, and skill, and who wishes to spread it around, is elitist." Those of the political persuasion that take pride in damning the quote elitist claim that they're just like you, one of the working class. However, in truth, these people who are just like you folks out there, living paycheck to paycheck, in reality often come from wealth. And though they often mock educators and advanced education, most of those good old boys graduated, often with advanced degrees, from one of the Ivy League schools, such as Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia, or some of the others. As a 7 or 8-year-old, at dance recital rehearsal, I was prancing like a model and made the comment that our costumes made us look far more sophisticated than our regular dress. I was greeted with looks of horror and disdain. "Look at her, getting all uppity. Think you're high and mighty, don't you? Better get off your high horse and back in your place where you belong, little girl." At that very moment, I reaffirmed my decision to get out of Dodge, which just happened to be a town nearby, as fast as I could. Addressing the cult of ignorance is very much a part of addressing media literacy. It includes such tactics as disinformation, bullying, and herd mentality, among many others. Next week, I will address more issues pertinent to media literacy. Beyond the Books, The Language of Success can be found on my website, susanstoderl.net/podcast, or on YouTube, channel @writer Susan Stoderl, the second and fourth Tuesday of each month.